Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I've been dying to make this video for a very long time and I was feeling very inspired this morning and figured it's Monday morning, today's the day to start it, so we're starting it. Basically, the concept of this video is I'm going to be going through my entire week and keeping track of how much time I spend on everything. So I'm going to be tracking all of my time to see where my time goes throughout the week. And then at the end of the week, we are going to do a little analysis to see what I spent my time on and if I'm happy with that, basically. I'm hopeful. Yes, I am hopeful for today. Ooh. I'm back. It's been about a week since the end of our little experiment, and I wanted to check in and basically let you guys know how it went and the biggest takeaways I had from it. So to start out, I'm going to explain the assumptions that I made while doing this activity. Basically, I only logged time spent on an activity if it was the main activity. So for example, if I was working while I was eating lunch, to me the main activity taking my energy there was work, so I didn't log eating lunch. So I'm trying to not log like multitasking activities unless it's like two activities that I consider one, like I do them together always. Like an example is I have dinner and TV. If I'm sitting down to eat dinner, I'm also watching TV. Sometimes when I eat dinner, I do it while I'm doing other work, like I'm editing a video. So for that, I didn't put in like dinner and work because the main activity was work. A little bit of background that I'm using to kind of compare how the activity went, or like how my time was spent that week, is I wanted to cover what my current goals are because I feel like that's helpful to kind of get like a baseline comparison of where I want to be, so we have something to compare to. So some of my current goals right now, I do like quarterly goals. So this is my Q2 goals. We're almost done with Q2. We're in the last month. The current goals that I have are to work on my YouTube channel as well as work on my side business. I'm currently in the process of developing a coaching program focused on overuse on social media and time management. Basically, goal one is just to put time into my side hustles. My two mini goals are: number one, to be more intentional with my time, my health, my sleep, my eating, basically overall just like listening to my body more. I realize that I am a very emotional person and I emotionally eat, I emotionally sleep. When I'm emotional and I can't make good decisions, I binge activities. And then my second mini goal, which is like my third goal for the quarter, is to do more fun and relaxing activities during the week. So let's get into the observations or things I noticed. Some overall observations I noticed about this was that I worked 35 hours in my full-time job this week. I slept for 59 hours, which is an average of about 8.5 per day, which I would say is really good. I think I need between 8 and 9 to feel rested. So I was really happy with that. And I spent 10 hours total during the week winding down on Twitch, which is what I called the activity. Basically, I spent an average of like 1.5 hours per night on Twitch, just like laying in bed trying to fall asleep. So the total to sleep each day took me about 10 hours. So basically 10 hours of every single day was spent trying to fall asleep or sleeping, which I thought was interesting to note. I spent about 45 minutes per day on average drinking my coffee and watching YouTube in the morning, which is like my daily morning routine. And I spent less than 20 minutes per day getting ready, showering, doing skincare, stuff like that, which I'm really not surprised with. I spent an hour and 40 minutes on walking, which was my only form of activity during the week. And I spent 2 hours and 43 minutes driving or riding transit, and then cleaning, grocery shopping, and laundry. So basically the only like housekeeping activities I did during the week only was 3 hours for the whole week, which I'm very happy with that as well. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I order my groceries through Instacart because I think that saves so much time. So let's get into the goal observation. So I'm going to go one by one through the goals that I discussed and then basically discuss any time that was associated with that goal and like see how we're doing, and then look at any potential action steps that we could take to improve that and get the time spent into an area that makes more sense and aligns more with the goal I'm trying to achieve. So the first one is my YouTube channel. During this week, I only posted one video and I spent an hour and 23 minutes editing, 37 minutes doing video details and the thumbnail, etc., 30 minutes doing YouTube channel work, so that might be responding to comments, organizing footage, planning content, things like that, 25 minutes recording for YouTube videos, and 15 minutes tracking and setting up the app that I used for this video actually. So overall, that's a little bit over 3 hours, which makes sense. I would say it probably takes 3 to 4 hours to get a video out, but an action step would be I need to spend bit more time here to continue with the 2 videos a week schedule that I'm trying to do. The next goal is my coaching program that I'm working on and the BGA course that I'm currently taking. So I spent almost 16 hours this week going through the course material in BGA, completing some of the exercises, and then taking action steps on them. 16 hours is a long time though. That's like 2 full days of work, which makes sense because I did a lot of work on Saturday and Sunday for that. I'm not surprised that it was 16 hours, but it's still a lot of time. I spent an hour and 3 minutes on social media for BGA. I specifically put time that I spent on social media to work on my coaching program into this category. And basically it was if I was posting my survey, interacting with people and scheduling calls, interacting with people in the Facebook groups that I'm in, etc. And as a comparison for that, I spent almost 2.5 hours scrolling for the week, or like mindlessly going on social media for fun, nothing to do with my business. I spent 4.5 hours doing client work, so specifically connecting with clients via Zoom or helping with organization and providing input on an Asana board for someone. I spent a few hours this week doing that as well, so that's why that amount of time is so high. Action step for this one would be to kind of just calm down on the time I'm spending going through BGA. The course is supposed to be a 3-month course if you're doing it full-time, or a 4-month course if you also have like a full-time job like I do. And I've already consumed 33, oh Boba, don't eat my bagel, sorry. I've already consumed like 33% of the course content in literally 1 week. Basically, I want to calm down with that because there's no reason to go that fast and it's just going to cause me to burn out. So that's kind of my action step for that one. To my first mini goal, so the intentional sleeping and eating and basically the intentionality portion and like the listening to my body. To kind of go back on some of the things I talked about earlier and like the general observations, I did spend 8.5 hours per day sleeping, which is really good for me, but I know I had a really busy week and I had been taking some of these like non-habit forming sleeping pills that I get at CVS during the week to help me fall asleep. I have a lot of issues actually falling asleep, so although I'm happy I slept that much, I know when I take sleeping pills I don't feel like as rested as I do if I like go to sleep naturally. So happy with the amount of time, not happy with how I fell asleep. 1.5 hours per day to wind down is definitely not my ideal scenario, especially considering I'm watching something on my phone to fall asleep. I'm really trying to get out of that habit, and I've gone through cycles where I'm really good at it and I only read books before bed, and then cycles where all I do is watch YouTube videos, which I think is probably the worst one. And then the one I'm in currently where I watch Twitch. It's easier because it's a lot slower pace than watching like a curated YouTube video, so it does help me calm down more. But it's still not my ideal scenario because you're looking at a screen obviously, and a lot of times I fall asleep before even turning it off, so I'm not even consciously choosing to fall asleep, which I think is really important for me. So I want to work on that more, and basically I just want to be more conscious about the activities I choose to do to relax. I'm totally fine watching Twitch sometimes or even playing video games myself, but if I'm not choosing to do it on my own, it has just like a different feeling, and a lot of times guilt is associated with it, and I feel like using something like that to help you fall asleep sometimes associates guilt, especially if you get into it and then you end up staying up too late like watching something, then you usually feel not great about it. So that's something I want to work on. So basically an action step for that one that I want to do is to consider trying some other activities to help me wind down and relax before bed that might help me fall asleep easier, and basically just do like a comparison, like does it still take me an hour and a half to fall asleep, or do I find myself only spending like 30 minutes trying to wind down. I kind of touched on this before, but I spent 2 hours and 27 minutes for the entire week scrolling on my phone, like using social media and stuff. Although it's not a terrible amount for an entire week, considering that's like definitely less than like 30 minutes per day. But basically it's not bad, right? Like it's not a bad amount of time, but that was actually within 4 specific sessions, and 2 of those sessions were actually an entire hour. Basically what I see from that is that I was scrolling on Instagram, but I was doing that for an entire hour at a time, which I do not like at all. 2 of the times were a total hour. The other 2 were like 15 minutes each, which that is totally fine. I'm totally fine scrolling for like 15 minutes, but an hour is not okay. There's a few trends that I actually noticed with this, and since I'm really into the social media overuse topic, I kind of wanted to go into this one in a bit more detail because I noticed some really interesting things. The first thing I noticed is that the 2-hour sessions were on a Thursday and on a Sunday, which if I think about it, it makes kind of sense sense because Thursday I was getting pretty burnt out from the week in terms of my work week of my 9-to-5 job, and then Sunday I had been working on my course as well as my job on Friday, so I had 3 full more days of like 8 to 9 hours of work in a day, and that's kind of what caused me to go into like the hour of scrolling. But the really interesting trend was that every time that I logged in my tracker that I was scrolling, I had just gotten off of a phone call, like a very long phone call. So like a phone call with a friend, or I was doing client work, which I thought was really interesting because basically what I see from that is I know that phone calls drain me. So it's interesting that when I was drained already, I was going and scrolling on social media, which I know is also extremely draining for me. So the fact that your brain, well, my brain is specifically choosing another mind-numbing and for me draining activity after another draining activity is very interesting and something I wanted to pay attention to. So for this one, the action step that I want to do is implement app limits for Instagram specifically because it seems like that's the one that's really pulling in a lot of my time. So if I just set app limits, then it really will help me to kind of just get a notification like, hey, it's been this much time that you've been on this app, and I can be like, wow, okay, now I see how much time passes and how useless the time actually was. It's less about the restriction with the app limits and it's more about the just becoming self-aware of how much time is actually passing and how much time I'm spending. And then another action step I want to take is to just keep my phone conversations shorter so that I avoid burnout. Since I noticed that I'm scrolling for these hour blocks of time after phone calls, I think it would be really helpful for me to plan an activity before I get on the phone that I'm going to do right after my phone call. So like if I want to read a book, then I would literally put a book out on the table or next to me, or even just hold it while I'm on the phone. So as soon as I hang up, I can pick up the book and start reading. Or if I want to go for a walk, I could put my sneakers on so I already have my shoes on for my walk. So as soon as I finish the phone call, I have something to immediately go towards. Another one I noticed was how much time I spent clearing my phone notifications, and I had specifically separated this out because I know that I spend a decent amount of time clearing phone notifications, and I found that I spent an hour and 8 minutes for the entire week just clearing my phone notifications. And this stems from a really bad habit that I've had for a long time, that I need to clear all my notifications on my phone before I can feel comfortable falling asleep. It's kind of just like a anxiety thing. If I have these notifications sitting on my phone, I feel like I haven't finished the day fully and that there's going to be things like waiting for me in the morning, so I like to just handle them before I go to sleep. I have definitely decreased the amount of time I spend clearing these notifications in the past few years. I used to spend way more time doing this, and I've done a few specific things to kind of work on that, like decreasing specific notifications, organizing my phone screen in a much more low stimulation way. A lot of my notifications are actually from email notifications because I like to keep my inbox at 0 for my important emails that I actually, check up on daily. Basically, action steps for this one is I want to start to pay attention to which apps are giving me the most notifications and make sure that I haven't had new apps downloaded that are causing more notifications that take more time for me to clear. And then I'm also going to go through that email subscription thing where I basically spend a week unsubscribing to emails. Moving on to eating. Now, this one at first glance wasn't that useful. The only thing I noticed is that there was really barely any time in my calendar for eating, which made me realize that I was eating while doing other activities. I'm assuming that a lot of this was breakfast and lunch, which I usually handle during the time I'm working, and the fact that I just said I handle those is pretty sad. But the cool thing was I was able to change the reports on the app to occurrences to kind of see the number of occurrences that happened for each of these. And what I found was that I only recorded eating breakfast one time. I only recorded eating lunch one time, which I actually had it under a category for eating dinner with friends, but I know that one of those was eating lunch with a friend. I had 4 occurrences of eating dinner while watching TV, which I do with Oliver whenever I cook for us or if we buy takeout food. And then I only had 1 occurrence of dinner with a friend. Overall, that's only 7 total occurrences in the entire week that were meant for only eating. 7 is only 1 per day, which is definitely not ideal. I would prefer to have like at least 2 of my meals per day, very intentional times where I'm like sitting down and specifically eating, whether it's with other people or by myself. And then my last mini goal is fun activities and relaxation that I wanted to kind of increase during this quarter. If you haven't already realized from the amount of time I explained at the beginning that I spent working this week, there really wasn't a lot of time left for these fun activities and relaxation. And I do consider my side hustle to be really fun. I actually enjoy doing it, but but it's not relaxing. Overall, key takeaways: I spent 2 hours at church, and I really want to get back into a routine of starting my morning with God and doing a devotional and reading my Bible, which I have not been doing lately because I've not had a good sleep schedule in general and definitely have not had a good morning routine. I spent 6 hours and 22 minutes talking on the phone, which again, linked to that scrolling habit and the burnout that I was discussing before, but that's a lot of time for me, and talking on the phone actually really drains me a lot. I'm pretty sure that this is like an oddball week. I do talk to my friends on the phone a decent amount because a lot of my friends are long distance and not located in DC, but 6 hours and 22 minutes, that's just too much time for me. That's very draining for me. Just thinking about talking on the phone for 6 hours and 22 minutes like makes me want to go lay in bed because that's just too much. Eating out with friends is something I did twice during this week. I actually would be pretty happy with even just once a week because I actually get drained in like social situations too. I really need them to like feel energized, but then if I have too much of them, I feel very drained. And that was almost 5 hours of my time during the week. So they were pretty long times that I spent when I went out to eat with friends. Dinner and TV, like I said before, I did this 4 different times during the week for a total of like 3 hours and 40 minutes for the entire week. And I'm happy because this was actually a correlation with how much time I spent with Oliver, because that's something I do with him a lot on the weeknights. And I also spent time with Oliver on the time that we drove out in Northern Virginia to get bubble tea and food takeout. And we also spent 20 minutes one of the days just hanging out and talking. So overall, I spent a good chunk of time with Oliver, which makes me happy as well because I want to be very intentional about that, considering we obviously live together in the same place and we both are working and studying from home. It can be easy to just feel like you hung out, but you really didn't actually spend any time together. Cooking, I spent 2 hours and 40 minutes on, which I love cooking, and it was across 3 different occurrences, and I'm really happy with that because cooking is actually very relaxing for me. Walking, I spent 1 hour and 40 minutes, and only one of these occurrences was an actual walk with a friend. The other 2 was just like a traveling walking, like to and from a dinner that I went to with a friend. So in terms of action steps for all of these items, I do want to spend more time going on walks, especially if I'm talking on the phone with someone already, but ideally I would just be going on walks specifically to, you know, go on the walk and enjoy my surroundings, or to like go with a friend and talk in person. Definitely want to be spending more activities doing like actual relaxing activities like reading or doing puzzles or playing a game on my Switch or something. Basically anything that I find legitimately fun and relaxing and it doesn't, you know, stress me out or burn me out. I definitely need to be spending more time doing some of those activities, as well as finding activities like that that I enjoy. And then overall, I think I really just need to work on balancing these things, you know, just kind of equaling things out over the weeks, especially like with the amount of time I spent on the phone, stuff like that. But I do want to say that life isn't an equal like 7-day chunks, right? Like every week isn't the same. It's not going to be. And honestly, if it was, it would probably get really boring. So it's really important to recognize that and realize that, you know, it's good to be balanced, but almost think about it over the long term. Like a quarter balance, I would say, would be a good amount, or like a year-long balance. You know, it's okay to spend a lot of time doing one activity one week and then much less of your time doing that activity the next week. Also being aware of how you feel, right? So for me, the main thing I've noticed here with the balance is that the time spent on the phone was too much, and I really remember feeling burnt out on all the phone calls I was on. That's something I do feel that is important for me on like a weekly basis to keep balance of. Oh my goodness, guys. I want to close out by just saying that I did try as best as I could to not let this activity boost my productivity or cause me to, you know, spend time differently than I normally would, but it kind of was inevitable because it was just really strange to be so aware of like switching tasks, and it was a lot easier to be like, oh, you know, normally I might switch from, you know, doing the laundry and then I want to go cook dinner, but I take like a 10-minute break to just like sit on my phone or like basically do something unplanned and mindless in between 2 large chunks of time. It was a lot easier to not do that because I was literally putting time into my phone every time I finished an activity. So that's one thing. I tried my best not to let it affect me, but it definitely did at some portions of the week. So, you know, I'm not always this productive, and I don't even know if you consider this fully productive. It's all relative, I guess, but you know, this isn't my normal week all the time. And even if it is my normal week, this week, it's not all the time. Like there's definitely weeks where I get nothing done and only do the bare minimum that I need to do. But because of this, I thought the number of occurrences and like the length of blocks of time were really interesting to look at, because even if I wasn't spending like 10 minutes here and there doing like small pointless things in between large tasks, I still spent like 2 different times where I spent an hour chunk of time just scrolling on my phone, you know? So I thought it was more important to like look at the length of big blocks of time as well as like the number of occurrences for things, or maybe a lack of occurrences, like how I talked about the eating breakfast. Like I only did that once, or log time doing that one time during the entire week. I think it'd be really interesting to do this over like a longer period period of time so you can kind of like see the trends and like see how things change for you. But yeah, I definitely suggest you guys try this activity if you're interested. Maybe just start by doing it for a week period like I did, or even just one day, to kind of see if the amount of time you're spending on activities actually aligns with what your current goals are, because it was honestly pretty eye-opening for me to see, even though it was kind of a crazy week and I did do a lot of things to kind of progress on my goals. It was more with those like smaller goals that I noticed like a big discrepancy in like what I want and then what I'm actually spending my time doing. It definitely also helped with the action items. So I told you guys some of the ones that I talked about in the video. I'm definitely going to start doing those already. So yeah, I think it's a really fun activity to try, and maybe to do it like once or twice a year or more if you actually enjoy doing it, which I actually enjoyed it to an extent. There was some days where I just totally forgot. And I think if you forget for periods of time, it's okay to go back and like guesstimate, but if you forget for like days on end, for example, it's going to be harder to kind of see trends. Yeah, I definitely suggest you guys try it out and see what you think, and let me know in the comments down below if you try it. I'm really curious to see what you guys find out about your lives during this. Kind of take it as like a pulse to kind of rebalance your life if you're feeling kind of out of whack, or you're just like not loving how your life is going or what you're spending time on. I would suggest trying this out and see if it works for you guys. But that is all I have for you guys today. I'm going to finally finish my bagel, and I'm also going to go start work because it's almost 10 o'clock. I gotta get going and finish some things that are due today. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.